Good afternoon to all the listeners out there. We have a guest with us today who's going to speak with us about something really interesting. She's a business owner and she has plenty of experience at what it is that she does. I want to welcome Janna to the show today. Janna, how are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. I hope this show goes well. I'm really interested in um, interviewing you because you come from a standpoint of a crafter. You come from a standpoint of an artist. And we really haven't had many on the show. They're mostly, business people that are coaches and consultants. But your specialty is different. You coming from artistic um, avenue. So we are glad to have you on the show today. And if you could take us back to when you knew that you had a gift, basically for what it is that you do today at this moment in time.
I'm going to try and make a really long story shorter. So I have been making things out of paper pretty much my whole life. My mom was also a paper crafter. She loved to do rubber stamps and stuff like that. So we always had things to collage with and art supplies around the house. And we were also pretty broke. So I like to make art out of all sorts of things that we got for free. So I used a lot of recycled materials, plastic bags, cardboard boxes, old magazines and newspapers and stuff like that to make stuff. And then I also had been writing poetry since I was a really young kid. And when I was getting ready to go away to college, I thought I was going to be a poet. I had been doing lots of poetry slam and performing and doing that kind of stuff. And my mom got me a scholarship to go to this school for doing creative writing. She took a bunch of my poems and submitted them for me when I was being a punk ass kid and didn't want to do it. And so I ended up being able to go away to school out of state to this little tiny private school. And when I got there, they had all of these amazing art classes on making paper, how to make handmade paper and how to do hand-bound books and like making your own books. And I didn't even know that that was an actual art form you could go to school for doing, let alone that they had these classes where I happened to go to school. So I signed up for all of those. And at the end of that year, I went to meet with my college advisor and I said, "Hey, these are all the classes I took. What major am I working toward?" And he said, "Those are all elective, so nothing." I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do now? I'm here on a scholarship. I can't waste a whole year of school. And, be my advisor, man. What are you advising here?" And he said, "What do you want to do?" Which is like the best question anyone's ever asked me in my whole life, And I said, "I want to be an artist and I don't want to be broke. How do I do that?" And he said, "You should do that as your major." So long story short, I did make up my own major. I took a major called Integrative Studies, and I created my own course of study where I took entrepreneurial business and creative art, and I integrated them together as one course of study. And I spent the rest of my 4 years figuring out how to make money selling art and how to run a business and how to sell art to people. And by the time I graduated, I had a 25-page business plan. I had a website. I had really crappy website. This is a long time ago. I had a little print catalog and I had some business cards and I had everything together to start a business. And I did it really, really small as my side gig for a super long time until after I had my first kid, and then quit my jobby job to stay home with my children and work on growing my company. And I have been full-time as an artist since 2016.
That is awesome. That is awesome for the simple fact that art and making money are not always, they don't always go together.
Like never. No, it's not never. It's not never, because there's a lot of things in the arts that people don't typically think of as the arts, right? So, Beyonce, she's in the arts, she's a singer, right? She's an artist and she makes bajillions of dollars and nobody's an eye about it. And You know, famous actors, they're artists. They're on the stage. Just because it's the stage is the movie or the stage is TV, like they're still an artist. And people don't bat an eye about that. But it's usually visual artists that people are like, oh, you can't do visual art and make money. You're going to be a starving artist, blah, blah, right? You can't all be Picasso until you're dead. Right? There's all these stereotypes about artists. And it's crazy because there's those stereotypes come along with the fact that so many people who make tons of money are expected to also hate their jobs.
Yeah.
You work real hard and you better be working hard at something you don't really love or doesn't fulfill you, because your reward for working so hard is making lots of money. And how dare you make lots of money and get to love what you do all day long.
Right. Right.
And so I really like to buck that stereotype and say, you know what, artists deserve to be paid well for what they know how to do that other people don't know how to do. And it's like my goal in life is to inspire other artists to not only go for it and charge what they're worth, but to learn how to start their own businesses and actually market their art as a product that is valuable, instead of saying, oh, well, I got to have fun while I made it, so if I make enough money to cover my materials, that should be good. Because that's not how you pay the rent.
That's right. That's right. And make a living. That's awesome. And I'm glad that you mentioned kind of inspiring other people, other artists, to be able to make a living at it. So what is it that, where would you say that you stood out as far as being able to, I know you say you did it on the side hustle for a while, but what was the ultimate thing that you did that transitioned you from part-time to full-time?
A lot of it really has to do with mindset, right? And I know you talk to a lot of coaches, so I'm sure you have a lot of coaches on here talking about your mindset. Everybody's got to get the mindset right. But for creatives especially, there's just imposter syndrome is rampant amongst creatives who think that they compare their artwork to other people, which you can't do that. And things like that. So you really have to, step one of being a profitable artist is to be your own biggest fan. Really, any entrepreneur, you need to be your own biggest fan. Because if you don't love what you do so much that you want to shout it from the rooftops, if you're not going to be giving your card to people standing in line with you at the grocery store and telling them how awesome your art is and showing them pictures, if you're not going to be that person, it's going to be really hard to sell your work. Because if you don't love it, why should anybody else? So it definitely starts there. How did I end up going from that? Well,
Let's back up there. Well, yeah, you're going into it. How did you get over your imposter syndrome?
I mean, a lot of it started while I was still in college, because I was designing this major of, yes, the people who are other art majors in this college were learning all sorts of things about how to make art, but they weren't teaching them anything about how to sell the art. They weren't teaching them how to run a business. They weren't teaching them how to manage their money, how to make any money at all. So I knew by designing this major that that's something I had to learn how to figure out. So one of the books that I picked as one of my textbooks was this book called Self-Promotion for the Creative Person. And the very first thing in that book was, you got to be your own biggest fan, and you have to be your own cheerleader and really, really believe in yourself and that your skills are valuable and that the art that you make is art that no one else could make. And if you're making art that someone else could obviously make, it's going to be really hard. So if you're making the kind of art that somebody looks at it and says, oh, I saw a tutorial how to do that on Pinterest. Or if you found a tutorial on Pinterest and that's the only art that you make, you might want to go back to the drawing board and really work on making something that someone else looks at it and says, holy crap, how did you make that? Right? You want people to not know how you do it.
Right.
And they're going to pay you for the skills that you have that they don't have. And so I think in some ways there's a lot of artists who have imposter syndrome because they haven't spent enough time working on their craft to be better at it than other people, to do something, to find their own voice, and to be able to do their type of art because they love it, not because it's going to look like somebody else's work or
Right.
that type of thing. So I really started, my teacher in college told me once that I make art fearlessly. And I never realized until right then that other people make art with, or that fear stops them from making art. And for me, especially in college, I was like, what is there to lose? I got our whole art studio and it's full of supplies that I didn't have to pay for. I could make whatever I want in here. Like,
Right.
why would you be afraid to try something and fail at it and have it suck? Like, who cares? Who cares? Like, it's just art. Try it. That's how you learn, is by trying and failing and learning what works and learning what doesn't work. And you can apply all of that to every aspect of entrepreneurship, by the way. And so I worked a lot on recognizing the ways that I was not afraid to try something new. And I wasn't afraid to say, um, yes to something that someone else said, oh, it's impossible to do that. Or you could never make something. Like, I make a lot of books. I make handmade books. And I like to make them where when you see it, it's all folded up small and you think it's a small book, but it opens and it opens and it opens and it opens. And when it's all open, it's like 4 or 5 feet long or 4 or 5 feet tall. And you don't know that because you have to experience it. And I love being able to do something that somebody else says is not possible. So I challenge myself in a lot of ways like that to overcome any type of imposter syndrome by doing things that other people say are not possible. And then people are always saying, holy crap, how did you make that? And it makes it really easy to know that I'm being really genuine and authentic with what I'm putting out into the world, because I'm not doing it for somebody else. I'm doing it because I love it. And I challenge myself to do it.
That's great. That's what we should all aspire to do, is be ourselves and create, what's in our minds. One thing about imposter syndrome, one thing about trying, kind of expanding on everything that you just said. One thing about both of those things is eventually you will get it. Eventually, someone will take notice. That will help you with imposter syndrome. That will help you, create more self-esteem or self-worth with what it is that you're doing. That goes for, like you said, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a writer, a creator, what they say, I guess the universe will let you know that you are doing a good job at what it is that you're doing. You, in your case, began to receive grants and kind of accolades, right? Can you touch on that a little bit when that start coming into play?
Sure. I have to backtrack a little bit because there's a big part of my artist / entrepreneurial story that I think people need to know before I launch into what I did with it. When I was still in college as a junior, I was 20 years old. 3 weeks into the school year, my mom passed away. And I was going to school 900 miles away from home. And all of a sudden, my brother and I had inherited her house, and she had no will. And I don't know if anyone's had to deal with a loved one who doesn't have a will, but it makes everything really, really difficult. So I was an instant adult, had this house that wasn't really mine, but was mine. I had to take care of it, but I lived 1,000 miles away, had no money, no nothing. And then 4 months later, on what would have been my mom's next birthday, my dorm where I was living burnt to the ground with all my stuff in it.
Oh my!
While I was in it on her birthday.
Oh.
And right. And I obviously was going through lots of grief and trauma and trying to figure out what's next and becoming an instant adult, and everything was completely and totally changed about my whole life. And I was really struggling to find I really just try not to say everything happens for a reason, because I think that's kind of crap. Because there's definitely things that happen that just suck and there's no good reason for it. But to me, I think one of the most interesting things about human beings is how we come back to life after something like that happens, and what we learn and what we can teach others about being alive on this planet after we've dealt with something that's really difficult. And I was thinking in the couple of days after the fire, you know, what am I supposed to be learning from this? And the first thing, it's my mom would have been 55. So I know you said the universe shows up, like shows you things, right? She would have been 55, and 5 has always been my lucky number. And since it happened on her birthday and it was 2 lucky numbers, I was like, okay, she's sending me a message for this. Like, this is from her. There is, you know, yes, this is terrible that's happened and I lost all my stuff day before the new semester started. Like, it was not ideal. But I knew it was just a sign that I had to really look for something deeper in this. And so I was like, well, if it's 55, that's 2 luckies. One, me and everyone else who was in that building while it was on fire got out alive. Like, that was really obvious. Like, okay, check, bonus. And then the second thing, my mom had always been a hoarder. I didn't know what that was when I was a kid. But once I learned about it, I was like, oh crap, like that's the kind of house I grew up in. I didn't even know that we had hardwood floors till I was 20 years old. I never saw them. Like, legit, never knew that they were there. And you never ate at our dining room table. Like, there was always like a 2-3 foot pile of papers and stuff on every surface of my entire house. And so having all of my favorite things, all of my coolest stuff, my whole entire room full of things, toast to the ground, and there was literally not one thing salvageable from that whole room. To wake up one day to have no stuff, it just hit me like 3 days after the fire. I was like, oh, she's sending me a lesson that she never learned while she was alive, that your stuff doesn't matter.
Right.
You don't need any of that stuff to survive. Nothing. And it really just solidified for me, like, the top 5 things you actually need to survive in this world. You need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need someone that loves you, and something that drives you. Everything else is cake. And I started making all of these artist books and making all this artwork about grief and trauma and about coming back to life and about how free I felt. Like, yes, I was grieving. I was sad that my mom was gone, but she had also been sick for a lot of her life. And so in some ways it was like, I'm grieving, but I'm also free from having to take care of her for the rest of my life, having to worry about her for the rest of my life. I know that she's fine where she is. And also being freed from materialism entirely. It was like, I don't need any of that stuff. And like, it really just showed me that, you know, things are nice to have. Like, are there things that were in that room I would still like to have now? Sure, but I don't need them. And it showed me that the most valuable thing about being alive on this earth is connecting with other people and having that connection and being able to communicate and share things with other people. So I started making these artworks, and then I started sharing them in these kind of like show and tell events where I would open the books and show people how they opened and read what they said, and people would get to have that experience. And I had so many people come up to me after I did these little shows, and they were crying. And they would come up to me and say, I'm a different person than I was before I saw that. I think differently about being alive as a person. I feel differently about my place in the world. And some of my professors would even come up to me and say, like, I thought I knew what I was doing with my life and now I don't. And thank you for that. And it really just, I wasn't entirely sure of how I wanted to start a business or which aspect of the creative things I like to do that I wanted to do for my business until that moment. And I was like, I don't care what I do for the rest of my life, but I want to do that. And I want to do that as often and as intentionally as possible, all the time. And that's why I called my business Papercraft Miracles, because it's the miracle that saved me when I literally had nothing. And so
I like it.
I bring that with me into everything that I do. So, and this is more than 20 years ago that this happened, 22 years ago, when all my stuff burnt in this fire and I was making all that artwork. So I've been doing this for a really long time. And to go from that, a kid graduating college who has a business plan, has a really garbage Angel Fire website, because this is like 2004, it was a long time ago. To go from that to being able to run a business full time was not a quick journey, because I had inherited my mother's house. I had to go back to Buffalo and like figure out her estate and like take care of this house that we'd inherited that was totally falling apart. And where I live in Buffalo and 20 years ago was not booming anywhere near what it is now. It was a very, very different city. Aside from the arts community, there really wasn't anything happening here. So I had to get some kind of day job. I actually worked at a gas station for 5 years after I graduated college. Was it ideal? No. But I learned so much about running a business by running someone else's business. I was in management pretty much immediately working there. So I was managing people, I was doing inventory, I was running payroll, I was, like learning all the things you need to know that you can't really learn from books. You have to be able to learn that like hands on. And I got to learn all of that stuff on somebody else's dime, which was cool. So I spent time doing that. And then I worked for a company that sold jewelry on the internet, and I edited all their photos for like 5 years. So not only did I learn how to edit photos of products and list them on the internet, which was, clutch for being able to like make art and sell it. But I also got to listen to 40 hours of podcasts a week while I worked there, because all I did was do Photoshop all day. And I got to learn all sorts of stuff. I was listening to This American Life. I was listening to The Moth. I was listening to people share their stories. I was listening to Being Boss and different podcasts about entrepreneurship. And I really was kind of developing my own mindset while I was working for somebody else. So if there's people listening to this who still have the day job and are like, oh, when am I ever going to quit it? Like, just keep doing that passion project in every capacity that you can, because it's not, I'm not going to lie and say like it's an overnight thing that you can just quit your job and be great, right? It takes a lot of time and effort and planning to be able to found and run a successful business, especially as a creative. And so after I worked editing photos for another 5 years, and doing some other small art things on the side. I was teaching workshops, and in 2013 is when I actually filed all the paperwork to make my business an actual business, and started running it like a business instead of just making gifts for people that I knew and doing craft shows here and there. And since 2013, I was forced to quit my job after I had my first kid, because they wouldn't allow me to work from home, and they didn't pay me enough to cover healthcare and daycare.
Right.
So I probably would still be working there had they not done that, because it was terrifying to be forced to have no paycheck and no health insurance after we just had a new baby and we had a giant mortgage, which was, every penny we thought we'd ever make when we got this mortgage on this building that we're in. And I ended up, as soon as I quit my job, I was terrified. I had been an adult on my own, owning a home and paying all my own bills and property taxes since I was 20 years old. So to be 30 years old and have no job was really terrifying. It was not a good place for me. And my husband he said to me, well, if you made more money, then you'd stay at work and I'd stay home with the kid, but you don't. So stay home and then, quote unquote, do your book thing. That's what he said. Do your book thing. Because at the time I was mostly making books, because I didn't have equipment to make paper and things like that. And shortly after I quit my job, I was also learning how to be a mom, because I had a little baby at home. And so I said, okay, well, this is the first time in my life that I don't have to wake up to an alarm. I don't have to go on anybody else's schedule. And I knew that I didn't want to just dick around all day. You know, like I didn't want to waste the fact that I finally had time to do all of these things for my business that had been sitting on the back burner. Like, I really want to build a new website that you can buy stuff on, and I had never had time to do that. And I wanted to rebrand the company. I wanted to start building my social media and figuring out how I could grow a company while I was also at home, primary caregiving for this kid. And so I did just that. And where a lot of moms would have been like, cool, I could chill, clean my house and watch Netflix. I was like, oh, hell to the no. I mean, I watched some Netflix, but um, I did. I hired a friend of mine who was also an entrepreneur to help rebrand my business. And I got a new logo, got a whole brand kit, new colors, new everything that was really on point toward my target market. I learned how to use Squarespace, and I built myself a new website that you could buy things on that I could actually edit and change myself, which is really crucial for anyone who is starting a small business. Make sure your website is a thing that you could edit by yourself, unless you
Right.
have tons of money to pay someone to edit a website. And I did that. And then I started building on my Instagram and posting about what it was like being at home with a baby and also growing a business, and being at home with a baby and learning how to still make art and doing that type of thing. And it started growing pretty quickly, which was awesome. And I applied for a grant, a business grant in 2018, when I had two kids. My middle kid was I don't know, 6 months old or something like that, 7 months old when I applied for this grant, and I won it. I won 25,000 bucks. And it was a pitch competition. And after I did the competition, not only did I get this money, which was amazing, but I also got a year of curated business mentorship. That was
Oh,
exactly, you know, they said, who do you need to meet? What do you want to learn how to do? What do you not know? What kind of resources do you need access to? And they gave me whatever I needed, which was insane, and changed the face of my business forever. And
definitely.
that $25,000 influx allowed me to hire my first staff member, which was also terrifying. But being in a business where we physically make everything by hand, one piece at a time, it's like, well, if I'm going to ever grow this business beyond just me to be the type of business that could support me and give me a full paycheck, I need to be able to work on my business. And if I'm the only one working in my business and I have two small kids who are under 3, I'm not going to be able to do that. And hiring her was amazing. I hired her and I trained her how to make a whole bunch of stuff. And she made a bunch of the stuff, and I worked on the business, and I went to all the coaching, and I went to all the mentorship, and I went to every free course I could go to, and I networked like crazy. And I paid a lot of money in childcare for people to watch my kids while I went to go do stuff, because I was like, I'm not going to get a chance like this to have a full year's worth of mentorship like this. That's, you know, on demand, whatever I needed. And I took advantage of every little bit of it, and it worked. I grew my company a lot. I ended up being awarded 40 under 40 for stationery and gifts the year after that in 2019. And by 2020, we were really doing well. We were booking a lot of weddings and events and doing a lot of wedding invitations and making a lot of paper flowers. And I had already made probably 50% of my 2019 revenue in the first quarter of 2020.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And then COVID happened. So here I am sitting in this luxury art wedding event industry business, which is our main clientele, was doing fancy weddings and events, and there are no weddings and events, none. And I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do now with this company? And it wasn't just me. I had staff, and had me and one other person, 2 small kids, and my husband's business was closed at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was like, well, at least for right now, I'm the breadwinner. Like, I got to do something here. I can't just, you know, let it die. I'm not going to let my dream die like that. And I, instead of saying, well, let's try to figure out how to keep shoving the world back into doing weddings and events when that's obviously not happening, I said, what skills do we have here that people in the world need right now? Instead of trying to push the market into my business, I pivoted my business toward where the market needed me to be. And I went right back to the roots of why I started doing this in the first place. I went way the hell back to, I know how to deal with trauma. I know how to deal with grief. I know how to help bring people together and help them feel differently about the way the world is and how they fit into it and how they connect with people and how they communicate with people. And everything became digital. Nobody was touching anything. And it was no good for people, right? People immediately found out how much they need art. There was no new TV, and musicians were not playing shows. They were figuring out how to record at home, and people were going ape shit, right?
You're right. You are right.
Right? Immediately, they were like, oh, wow, the artists are really important.
Yeah.
And I knew that my wheelhouse, like my sweet spot, was helping people say things they don't know how to say and inspiring people and helping people feel connected and giving people those conversation pieces, making those conversation pieces that when people see it, they remember the experience of when they received that gift. Like, we make gifts that people never throw away, ever. We make things that people pass down to their kids. Like, this is the most special thing I have. And so during COVID, instead of trying to do more weddings, I said, I know you're not going to see your mom for like 6 months. Why don't you send her some paper flowers that she can have the whole time and they'll never die? What's her favorite flower? What's your birth month? You know, what's your kid's birth month to send to your grandma? You know, like, what can we do to help people feel connected? And we started doing lots of that kind of stuff, custom gifts. And I ended up making so many flowers for Mother's Day during 2020 that I had blisters on my fingers from cutting paper. It was intense, but where 90% of our revenue disappeared, we tripled our revenue in 2020.
Ah.
And not only did we not go out of business, we were doing great. And we ended up making flowers for Twitter in 2020. They found us on the internet and saw some of the stuff we were doing, and they hired us to make flowers for some of their VIP clients. And I'm not allowed to say who they were, which is like, they were that VIP clients, people you've definitely heard of. And it kind of kept taking off from there. And in the beginning of 2021, we had been doing well in 2020. I was like, all right, cool. Let's, keep on keeping on what we're doing. Since we had started doing stuff for Twitter, I was like, well, who else needs to be able to connect with people? Businesses need to be able to connect with people. They still can't get together. They can't see their clients or their staff or potential customers. And, nobody wants another Zoom meeting, right? Everyone's tapped out as hell on all this digital stuff. People need a safe, tangible way to connect with each other. Something they can hold in their hands that gives them that experience and helps them to communicate a message somehow. And so we started doing lots of that stuff. And we did a lot of plantable paper, which we've been doing for a long time anyway. But it's paper with seeds in it. So we make seed paper, we make seed bombs out of recycled paper with seeds embedded right in it. You just dip them in water, plant them, and they grow. And we can customize them in any way that you want. And so we had been doing that. And then during COVID, when everyone was starting a garden, everyone's at home, we were like, okay, cool, let's lean into this. So we started doing a lot of those for businesses, corporate swag, product packaging, all that kind of stuff. And then that started taking off. Beginning of 2021, on my mom's birthday, of course it was on her birthday, right? She sent this to me. I know she did. In January, I get this phone call on a Friday afternoon that said, would it be possible to make 500,000 of your seed bombs by March? 500,000, right? We make these by hand. And at the time, I had 2 employees who each worked 10 hours a week, plus me. And what would most people say in that situation if they got that phone call? What would most people say?
I don't know. Me, myself, I'm going to make it happen. My answer would have been yes.
Yeah. Most people would have been like, hell to the no, you crazy, right? And I was like, my assistant, who was looking at me from across the room while I took this phone call, was like, no, 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 you need to say no, there's no way. And I looked at the calendar, saw that it was my mom's birthday, knew that she had made this happen, and I said, define possible, depend how much money you got.
That's
And
it.
within, this is on a Friday, by the following Wednesday, I had converted my company to an LLC, opened all new bank accounts, had sent this company a bid, they accepted it, and I had $150,000 in my bank account.
Just
Half,
like that.
half up front. I hired a team of 70 people, including an outsourced HR manager. So don't forget that person on your team if you ever have to scale. Outsource that. Make sure you got somebody doing all your hiring for you and do it right. Get all your paperwork. But yeah, overnight, I did all that, hired this huge team, trained this whole team, and we worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 months and completed the contract on time. After we finished it, I knew the company that had hired us to do it, but I didn't know what they were using them for. And a couple of weeks after we finished it, somebody sends me an Instagram message of a screenshot of a post from Lowe's, you know, the home improvement store.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And it was a promo photo that had seed bombs in it. And they said, is this you? Is this what you were making? Because I was like posting about this whole project and this craziness we were doing on Instagram the whole time. And I was like, no way. We made all of the seed bombs that went into these biodegradable piñatas that were given away at Lowe's for their spring garden giveaway all across the entire country. It was awesome. And not only did we nail that contract and get it done on time, but I had always thought that I would be able to do something like that I would be able to handle a huge team of artists to all like work together to do something like really amazing, and to be that kind of boss that inspires people to want to come to work and to have a good time and to enjoy themselves, and to be that kind of leader who cares about their people, and to actually have that come to fruition and be that type of leader during COVID, during the Delta wave in the middle of the winter of 2021, to work in close quarters with 70 people and nobody got sick. We didn't have to shut down at all the whole entire time. And I paid out over $130,000 in salary to people who were unemployed or underemployed. Artists, creatives, musicians, high school kids, seniors who had retired, who needed to come back out of the workforce and make more money, immigrants who didn't speak English at all. Like, all of those people were working together, and I got to make that happen. Even if it was temporary, like, I got to make that happen. And I was like, hell yeah, I could do anything after this. And a couple months after that, I got picked to be on a TV show. I was on Discovery Plus on this show called Meet Your Maker Showdown. I was one of the top 4 paper crafters in the country, picked to compete on this TV show. And I flew to LA and filmed that. And 5 days after I came back, I got pregnant with my daughter by accident. And so yeah, the rest of 2021 and 2022 was way, way slower than 2021 because I was pregnant and had a little baby. But I had been able to run my business in a way where I paid myself enough that I could afford to take paid maternity leave from my own job. I got paid by New York State through paid family leave to be home with my daughter for 3 months. And my amazing staff, who I kept after this giant crazy job, I had 4 people at the time. They ran my business without me. And what a dream, right? Like, what entrepreneur do you know that could take 3 months off?
Yeah, yeah.
Still have a business when they come back. I mean, I was checking email, I was running payroll, but like, they were making all of the product. They were managing the day to day, and they made it happen. And so it's a very long story, but saying yes to things that seem insane was a big part of how did I end up doing it full time. But really embracing when an opportunity is thrown at me. You know, some people would get fired from a job or have to be, you know, forced to leave their job and stay home with a kid. Would they immediately, like, you know, go crazy and start growing a business? No, they probably would just stay home, but you don't have to. You don't have to. And because I didn't, now I get to do what I love every day. And I have 3 kids who get to see their mom do exactly what she loves every single day. And I get to make magic happen for other people. I still get to inspire those conversations that change the way that people think and feel about their place in the world. I do that all the time. Like we made these books for this woman whose best friend was in hospice and she was dying. And she brought us this big box of photographs, old photographs from her friend's whole entire life. And she said, "Can you make copies of these and make me 2 copies of a photo album with these photos in it? So before she dies, I can sit with her and she can tell me who all these people are. And I can take notes in these photo albums so that I know who those people are. And I can give a copy of it to her family so they know who all those people are." Like we made it possible for her to enjoy the end of her friend's life and to keep learning from her friend and to help her friend document her life in perpetuity. We gave her friend everlasting life, you know, in a way. And I get to do that kind of work every single day. Every day. It's amazing.
That's the magic of art. That is the magic of art. That's the one thing I believe that will stick with us and be passed down. And it's also the quality of life that you're mentioning. Can you imagine if people, more people were able to wake up every day doing what they love? Like there just wouldn't be as much misery and as much, you know, strife and things of that nature going on if people were able to make a living, you know, just being happy at creating whatever it is that they create.
Exactly. And I think if more big, huge business owners valued their people, the world would be so much better. And, you know, I hate to be like on this Millionaire morning show, be like, it's not all about profits, but it's not all about profits. And if the biggest businesses in the world operated in a way where they put people and the planet ahead of profits, our world would be vastly different from how it is right now.
And
you know, like people
like,
would feel cared for when they go to work. They would be invested in the jobs that they're doing because they knew that their employer cared more about them than they cared about money. But they don't. They don't. And it's so obvious. And they're like, "Oh, what is all this quiet quitting? We can't find anyone who wants to work here." And I'm like, I got people beating down the door to work for me. You know why? Because I care about them. And it shows. Like my employees will work when it's really slow and they only got 20 hours or 15 hours or 10 hours. If I'm like, "We're real slow this week, y'all should take a vacation," they do. And when we're really busy, I'm like, "Y'all, can y'all work 60 hours this week? We got to hustle. We got like a crazy deadline." They'll do it because they know that I care about them. If they call me up and they're like, "I'm just having a crap day," or "My cat is sick," or the things that are important to me outside of work are in my way today, I say, "No problem. You take a day. You take 2 days." My one assistant, her husband died of cancer the first summer that she worked here. And I said, "You're never going to get that time back. You go do you. I'm going to give more hours to somebody else while you're not here. And when you're ready to come back, you let me know and we'll balance it back out." And she still works for me now. So, when you treat people like people instead of like robots or animals, and they know that you give a crap about them, you won't ever have to try to find employees. You will work with partners every day.
That's an excellent way to put
We
it.
have a blast, man. We have so much fun. Like, we every single day, at least once a day, we laugh so hard we almost fall on the floor. Like every day. Whose job is like that? No one's job is like that. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I don't know where we got to the point where it's just money, money, money. Um, and it's crazy because it's all, like you said, for things, it seems that, well, a lot of it could be for power and proximity, but a lot of it is also for things that you can't take with you when you leave. Um, the Millionaire by Morning show, it started out, I've always been a hustler. I've always thought that if you put your mind to it, whatever amount of money that you put in your head that you want to make, you're able to make it if you just go out and focus on it. However, I also know that the thought or the being yourself waking up every morning feeling like a millionaire don't always have to amount to the amount of money you have in your bank account. It could actually just be a feeling. There's a lot of people who don't just have, a lot of money, don't have $1 million, in the bank account. However, they're happy. They have a smile on their face because they wake up every day. They have someone that loves them. They have things that fulfill them in life. And I think that's where my show is more so headed towards, because that's what counts. That's what matters. Feeling like a millionaire over having just a bunch of millions. I think that's a profound way to present my message to society.
Exactly. And, I think the thing that I would say most people, why most people would want to be a quote unquote millionaire is so they don't have to worry about money.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Not because they want to be rich. They just want to not worry about money. And the easiest way to not worry so much about money is to learn how to be happy with less stuff. Like, you don't need the stuff. You don't have to have a sweet car. It's nice to have a car. You want one that doesn't fall apart, but like, do you need to drive a Lamborghini? Hell no, you don't. But if that's the thing you really want, you got to work extra to get that thing. But you will be much happier as a human being on earth if you spend more of your time with people and less of your money on stuff. If you're gonna have stuff, that stuff better matter. And I think that's really a lot of the heart of like why we do what we do and why we make the things that we make. So we design everything we make in this company to be something that people will love and cherish and keep in their homes and pass down to people. Or we make things that are easily returnable to the earth, that completely biodegrade and turn into gardens that take care of the planet. Right. And people can see those flowers and say, I remember that. Right. I remember those flowers came from so-and-so. And they remember those experiences. They remember those conversations. And it brings it all back to like, how are you the richest person in the world? Because you're connected. You feel connected to other people.
Right.
I think the people of the world are the people who are remembered when they die.
Yeah.
Like that you did enough during your time here that you made effects on other people where people still want to talk about you when you're not here. Yeah. And, I think that's the best thing that we could do as human beings.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That kind of fits in with the narrative. How do you, knowing that, how do you put a price on your product? Knowing that it is an everlasting product, knowing that it's handmade, but also knowing that it doesn't have to go out to the person with the most money, but can also be enjoyed by someone who doesn't have as much money, but it means the same thing to both.
Well, first of all, I don't sell all my products for the same price. We make a very wide range of items. I have some things that we sell for $2.50, and I have some things that we sell for thousands of dollars. And while I have my target market of the people that I work with the most often, the people I enjoy working with, people who can really afford with their regular salaries to pay for my paycheck and my staff's paycheck and our building overhead and that type of thing. You got to be business minded about it. You have to at least charge enough to cover your costs plus profit plus taxes, right? So there's some things that we make that are easier to make, that have really low cost, low labor costs, low, product cost, cost of goods sold, material costs, whatnot. So there's some things like that I know have a much higher profit margin. And the more we sell of that kind of stuff, the more I can afford to, when I want to, make art that is only intended to go in a gallery and I might not sell it ever. The more I can afford to make some of the things like hand-bound books that are not as profitable, even because I like making them and I enjoy doing that. The more that we're teaching workshops and teaching other people how to make things, the more I can afford to donate things to good causes. The more I can afford to do small fundraisers and do parties and give free tickets away to people to come take workshops and stuff like that. And I think the more that I guess, as you can't see it right now, but I have a really huge tattoo on my back that is, it looks like a tree, but at the bottom of the tree, it looks like a hand, and the hand is going down into the earth like the roots. On the top of the tree, it looks like a hand, but it looks like the branches. And all the branches on the side are either hands that are catching raindrops coming out of the sky, or they're hands that are dropping seeds. And there's a big, huge storm cloud and it's pouring rain. But underneath the bottom of the tree, all along the ground, all those seeds that are getting dropped are all growing into flowers. Because as you take, you have to give. And as you give, you have to take, because that is the balance of the world. And if you operate your business that way, obviously you don't want to just break even barely, right? But if you try to keep it as balanced as possible, where, as you're making a good amount of money, as you're doing well, what are you doing with that? How are you helping the world to be a better place with the money that you make? The more money you make, the more of a difference you can make in the world. So would I love to make millions and millions of dollars? Sure. But I know that if I did, I would also make millions of things happen in this world. And long before I would, buy a yacht, right? I'm not going to do that. And I find it really difficult to swallow that somebody could be like Jeff Bezos and have that much money and not give so much more of it away.
Well, here's
I know he
something
gives a
that's,
lot away, but I mean, percentage wise, he doesn't give that much away of what he makes. And I find that hard. I find that hard. If it was me, I would never amass that much money in the first place. I would have been giving it away long before that.
have you noticed that in the end, all of the ultra billionaires, the one thing that they want when they die, when they pass, the one thing that they want is to be remembered. So they start putting their monies into things that will last, into buildings. So then they start being philanthropists at the end of their life, because like you said earlier, what you really have and what you really want to leave is a legacy. But have you lived your life throughout your time span? Was it you giving back throughout your time span? A lot of those people, the ultra billionaires, the one thing that they do is give back at the end of their life. Even though, they were villains, they've been villains their entire life. The one thing that they want is their name to be remembered, which is kind of crazy. That's so crazy to me because it's like hoarding. They're hoarding money until the end, and then they want to disperse it the way that they see fit. Um, but it's all to leave a legacy and to have someone to remember their name, which is, I don't know. I look at that as backwards.
I just hope that they do it sooner rather than later, right?
Right,
Because
right.
if I had that much money and I had the power to, without it drastically changing my lifestyle at all, make sure that everyone in this country had enough food. If I had that power and I didn't take it and I didn't use it for something like that, I don't know how someone could sleep at night knowing that they would be able to make being alive easier for so many more people.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how they don't do that, like, you
yeah.
know,
I don't I don't either. I don't either. Oh my
I know,
God.
you know,
It's it's something. It's something that's witnessed, lived through.
and
So
as they say though, if you take and you take and you take and you take and you don't give, the world's gonna take it back. The balance will happen eventually in some way, right?
yeah.
So, I think they must also be really lonely and they don't have that connection.
I would think, I would think, like if they really sat down, if they really sat down with the psychologist, they would see an issue there. I would believe you have to be that type of person. There has to be something, going on. Which
Yeah.
I think that there has been a study done before that kind of mentions that. But here we're talking about positivity. We're talking about artistic work. Where can someone find you if they want to follow you or if they want to purchase some of your artwork?
It's actually really easy to find us. My website is just papercraftmiracles.com. All one word, Papercraft Miracles. We are on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok as Papercraft Miracles. Um, Pretty much everywhere like that. Just Google us, you'll find us. And I am also currently working on a course to teach other artists how to start their own profitable businesses and how to sell art to people. Because selling art isn't like selling any other product, because buy one, get one ain't gonna work. So I'm working on that, and it will be launched hopefully by the end of this year, early next year.
Cool. With that being said, once you launch, I'd like to get you back on the show.
I would love that.
Okay, so yeah, we could definitely do a follow-up interview and we can kind of push that course because I am recreating my podcast to where we're going to go live, be able to take questions to my viewers and listeners. And I will promote it, for maybe 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. So I would love to have you on that show.
Awesome. I also want to say I have my own podcast as well. That is like my passion baby. It's not necessarily related specifically to my business, but it's related to the core of my business about helping people feel connected. And it's called Reach the Stars Podcast, and it's a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things all around the world, who have inspiring stories of persistence, passion, and purpose. And it's like all of those stories back in the day when people are sitting around the campfire in the dark. It's like those kind of stories where you hear that story, and after you have that experience of hearing someone's life story that way, you're different.
That is what's up. I am going to put I'll put all of your information in the show notes, but I'm definitely going to put your podcast information in there. Me, myself, I will be listening. I love stories like that. I used to sit around, we had a fire barrel that we used to sit around, and my father and all his friends would tell those life-changing stories. And to this day, I still go by some of the advice that they gave around the fire barrel. So
Exactly. I love
yeah,
it. I love it.
definitely.
It's like that's the place where you go to be forever changed.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what happens on my show. So I hope y'all get to check it out. And there's like 60 episodes, so you could be busy listening for a long time.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, I want to thank you for coming on my show this evening. It was an awesome conversation. You have you have actually gave a footprint for artists to kind of step back, look at it, what it is that they're doing, and they can follow you. I do have a lot of people. I am really into music, so a lot of people that I talk to on a daily basis that also listen to my show. They are very interested in the artwork, whether it be music, you know, whether it be paper crafts or whatever it could possibly be. They appreciate the art form in whatever form. So I want to thank you for coming on here and giving my listeners something to check out, to jam to, and to sit back and learn from.
Awesome. And if your musical listeners are curious, they can I've been playing in a band and performing music for a really long time too. And you can check out my band. It's called Bloodthirsty Vegans. And
Bloodthirsty
I
vegans.
sing, rap, and play the trumpet in that
Oh
band.
yeah. So where do you find that at? Is that on iTunes?
Um, you could probably find it on iTunes. We have some of our stuff on Spotify, but the best place to find it is at bloodthirstyvegans.bandcamp.com.
Oh, Bandcamp. Okay. All right.
Okay. Got
Definitely.
all our albums are up there. We're working on album number 3, and it's just really fun slam poetry, hip hop music, all original songs about changing the world and bringing people back together and teaching people how to dance the dances of freedom.
That's cool. That is cool. Keep it going. Keep it going. All right. I want to thank you again. And I will see you next time. I'll add you on all of the social channels. So I will be watching what you're doing and keeping in touch.
Thanks for having me.
All right. You have a great night. Talk to you later.